Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to another Morgan James book launch. My name's Jim Howard. I'm the publisher for Morgan James Publishing, and I am excited to introduce today's author. Uh, today's author is one, I don't know, this book just has so much meaning, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear her today and to learn more about what she's doing and about the book. So today we have Elaine Kennelly on with us, and Elaine is the author of Finding Peace After a Suicide Loss: Healing Truths for Those Not Yet Healed. Elaine, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I look forward to this.
Oh, this is such an important topic. And I think when we all think about it, we either have experienced a loved one or know someone who has. I mean, this affects so many of us in recent years that it's just become something that everyone needs to be aware of. Everyone needs to understand what can happen through these scenarios and the impact that it has on us and everyone around us. So, what was the driving force for you that encouraged you to write Finding Peace After Suicide Loss?
Well, this book revolves around the story of our 18-year-old son, Matthew, who completed suicide. He had gone missing from home. No one had seen him, not at school nor at work. My husband, Tom, searched for him frantically, and 2 days later, Tom found Matthew dead. Our precious son had taken a heavy-duty extension cord from the garage, and he went out into the woods near our home and hung himself in a tree near our house. Nothing prepares one for a suicide loss. I was in complete shock. I was in total disbelief. There was this overwhelming pain and anguish, plus confusion. My mind simply could not function properly. We had been thrust into the world of tragedy, and our lives would never be the same. And after the aftermath of our horrible loss, I found myself sliding quickly into the pit of bitterness, anger, unending guilt, and self-pity. And I stayed there and became a miserable, irritable person. Where was the God I knew in all of this? Do you remember the story of Jesus and the crippled man at the pool of Bethesda? Well, he had been lying there for 38 years, and Jesus asks him this question: would you like to get well? Finally, after a decade in the pit, I had to ask myself the same question. Elaine, do you want to get well? And what I realized was I had to get rid of my negative mindset. I had to start telling myself the truth instead of the lies that I was believing. And you know what I was believing? Elaine, you're a total failure. Elaine, God doesn't love you. And I had to stop saying that to myself. And I finally got to the point where I said, I am going to heal. And I don't care how long it takes. And little by little, I did heal. And I have joy in my life once again. Our marriage survived this horrific loss. And I can tell you that it is my purpose and deep desire in this book to help others heal after a tragic loss. I want my readers to know that I do write with emotional integrity and honesty. I don't sugarcoat any of my mistakes, nor do I give trite answers. I share my story to help them heal. And I'm grateful to Morgan James for having published this, because without this book, the real tragedy would be that many would never heal.
Yeah, no doubt. Wow. And you can't imagine going through it until you experience something like that, and you can't understand the issues that can come up when you're dealing with this, as you mentioned, your marriage survived, and many don't, and you go into these dark places, and many do, and it's hard to find that way out. And you mentioned healing so many times in that first piece of conversation. So can you explain to us what your three-part process to healing is?
I divided the book into three sections, and the first part I call the death,
Mm,
because I had to affirm the pain and anguish involved in a tragic loss. Very few people ever said how awful it was, how terrible, how agonizing it would be. Suicide grief is difficult. It's long and it's complicated. There are so many questions and very few answers. And I had to tackle in that first part of the book the issue of the wake, the funeral, the burial. And I even talked about the dreadful day of choosing our son's casket. That was a difficult time in our life. Then in the middle part of the book, I call that the battle, because it is a battle to heal. And I describe 7 battles after a tragic loss. It is very important to name the battles because you cannot heal without knowing what you are up against. And for each battle, I give a healing truth that comes from scripture. I share some of my personal battles with guilt, rejection, blame, stigma, to name a few. And of course, I tackle the question, is my loved one in heaven or not?
mm,
The third part of the book, I entitled Hope and Healing. That's my favorite part of the book. I carefully went back into the pain and analyzed, how did I crawl out of the pit? And I actually introduced small, intentional steps to take so that healing will begin. Topics I cover there are prayer,
mm.
love, especially God's love and that relationship with God, the need for forgiveness, commitment, and the overriding theme of the entire book is God's grace always wins.
That is amazing. And that's so true, isn't it? And many times we take journeys on our own and we just can't get there by ourselves. But we understand when we know the truth and we understand the truth, we know we have that power and on our side, and God is always in control. And sometimes we can lose sight of that. But when we come back and find that reality again, we find comfort and peace and hope and the ability to breathe. And when we don't think we can. So, you know, with your book, you talk about people who experience that sudden loss, right? That suicide loss, the ripping away. Who would benefit from your book the most?
I would like to share with you some amazing statistics.
Mm,
54% of all Americans have been affected by a suicide. That's 179 million people. It's the majority.
mm,
And each day, there are 132 suicides in America, 3 times as many suicides as homicides.
mm,
This book is for everyone who has lost a loved one to suicide, murder, or any tragic loss. Plus, it will help those who are a friend or perhaps a coworker or neighbor to understand the pain, the sorrow, and the difficult battles after a suicide death. Just by reading this book, you could help others to heal.
mm.
Counselors need this book, therapists need this book, teachers need this book. And of course, pastors and those involved in Christian ministries need to read this book. I am thrilled that Morgan James is distributing this book worldwide to all English-speaking countries around the world, because the World Health Organization has just announced that last year, during the pandemic, there were an estimated 1.3 million suicide losses around the globe.
Hmm.
And they believe that every suicide affects at least 100 people. That's 130 million people. I know without a doubt that the world needs healing. America needs healing. Our families need healing. And I am proud and happy to partner with Morgan James in this book, Finding Peace After a Suicide Loss. I know it can benefit everyone.
Mm, thank you. And for all of you out here watching today, this book is powerful. As I stated before, it's just a necessary read. It really truly is. We see this. We talk about pandemic with COVID and everything that happened over the last year, but this is an epidemic. This is something that is going to affect all of us. And as Elaine just said, you may not have it in your immediate family, but your extended family, your friends, your neighbors, someone almost guaranteed is dealing with this right now. And when in those moments that you find yourself where you don't know what to say, where you don't know how you can help, where you don't know what you should do, sometimes a book is a great source of information and relief and release. So I encourage all of you to find a copy of Finding Peace After Suicide Loss. It's available everywhere books are sold now, so you can get your copy online, offline, in your favorite bookstore. It's available in ebook and physical book. So whether you want to read it on your digital reader or in book form, it's there for you. And one thing about books like this, these are great gifts to give to other people who are suffering. So I just say, if this book has any weight for you, if you think that this book could help you or someone you get a copy today. And Elaine, if someone is watching this video now, or maybe they have already ordered a copy of the book, they're just waiting for it to arrive, or they're planning on picking up a copy of this book, how can people connect with you and find out more about what you're doing?
I urge them to go to my website, ElaineKennelly.com. Now, I have a kind of a difficult name to spell, so we've made it even easier if you go to www.suicidehealing.com. Or you can even go to the name of the book, Finding Peace After a Suicide Loss.com, and you'll find me there. And I would encourage you to subscribe, because each week I write a blog. It's a devotional that goes intentionally to the people who need this healing after a tragic death. And in the blog area, you can actually comment, and we can actually be chatting together in the blog section on the website. So I would encourage people to take advantage of that.
Awesome. Outstanding. And I'm sure they will, and I hope that they will. But Elaine, one thing I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your journey, for putting others in front of yourself and saying, I can help. And that to me is one of the most noble things that any of us can do, to actually share our emotions and share our pain, especially when we know we've found the help and the hope that we needed to overcome that. And you can help other people in that journey. And as I said to you, I know way back when we started putting this book together with Morgan James, for me, this is the way that we touch people and that we help people, is when we allow them to align themselves with us and say, that person did it and I can too. And Elaine, you're doing that. So I'm so honored to be part of your team and help you bring this book out to the world. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It was a joy, a pleasure. And I am praying for everyone who will ever read this book. I promise you that.
Outstanding. Well, thank you guys for tuning in today as well. This is an incredible book. I really hope you grab a copy for yourself to be educated about this topic. If you know someone in your extended family, a friend, a loved one, even just a member of your community, your neighborhood, who may be suffering with this type of loss, I encourage you to get a copy of this book now, so you can be their leaning pole, or give a copy to them so that they can go through and get the hope and help that they need. So until our next one, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.